Well, look out, here's trouble. This thing up in the corner here is a HUD, head-up display. It has a little projector there shining onto the windscreen, the central numbers, speed in kilometres an hour. The top left is the focus of all of this. The other thing a HUD has actually is a speed alarm. But up on the top left is a thing called the compass. That little round disc there. Let's just see if we can get a bit better view of that. So you can see the left-hand side of that. There's an arc going through the middle of that above the zero there. Up in the top left corner of all of that, lit up, is a circle that points north, south, east, west. And the way it shows things, it is a bit difficult to see. It shows things like northeast by showing a little N at the top and an E at the side, and so on and so forth. But that unfortunately is very difficult to read while you go along, so you can only do that at particular points rather than instantly when you need to know by an arrow. So I decided I'd get a different HUD system, but that HUD system has one huge failure. It requires Bluetooth and a telephone app to operate it. Now, this one here does do that, but like I say, it does in fact do all of that in the GPS functions of it without a telephone. Trouble is, it's just difficult to read. So, go for a little move along here. Look at that handbrake on, yep. And maybe take a look at this stuff. Now, the speed alarm in this is set to 40 kilometres an hour. Let's see if I can lift it up higher here. Now, this is very difficult to do, all of this. It's just not that difficult. So it's about 3 a.m. here. See this. You can see that there's a point that we're doing something like south, heading something like southwest. Now, we're over 40 kilometres an hour, which is actually a setting inside the device, because we're actually doing 38, 35 when that went off, 38 kilometres an hour. We're going to come into here. And find some light and show you a point about this. Yeah. Right, so what you are looking at in the car is one of these. Right, the actual one is this model here. There. That's the actual model that's up on the windscreen there that was displaying an in use. Now that one there, they all have GPS, and they use GPS to calculate your speed, and it's nearly an aberration. It gets very close, but it is considered to be a couple of kilometres an hour out to a few kilometres an hour out at a time. Now, that's what the unit inside there looks like. There's a set of buttons on it and a USB port connector like a flash drive does. It's not actually the same as a telephone quite, but very, very similar. No great problems in putting the connection. Now, this one I'm holding in my hand though is actually this one here, and it requires Bluetooth and a telephone to operate it, so it's a useless bastard even though it picks up GPS. Can show a compass. You can just see the yellow there of the projector. Right. In this one here, this one also uses GPS. It's exactly the same as what this one is, but it has its own screen on it. So this one is actually very useful for the point, but the trouble is it's very bulky. As you can see by comparison of size, it's two of those and a giant projector, so it's very difficult to sit it in here. Now here's the arrangement. You can see up there, you can see over the top of all of that. You're nearly looking at the windscreen when you're sitting back there when you see that. Not quite, but it doesn't really cause any problems or any excessive danger to anyone or anything. They're actually quite a good machine, these sorts of things. But it does have the trouble when you come across something like this. This one is called an M17 HUD that's sold. They come from Taiwan. Right. That has the yellow arrow. That has the yellow arrow too. You can see here, although it's not in colour, that there is really the same as this thing here. But this idiocy here, this M15 one, which would be as good as having one of those sitting under there, that unfortunately requires Bluetooth. So that's a stupid idea. You can see that one there. And from the box, I don't know if the box actually for this larger one, yes it does. So you can see they're very similar sort of a thing, but this larger, wider one doesn't use Bluetooth. I've forgotten, but just be sure when you ask them that the GPS system that you need to use to set your speed alarm, because in this country we have a thing called speed zones for school at particular hours. There are other features. On the right-hand top side, I forgot to mention in the other video, is the time is actually set by GPS by the satellite. So when you switch these things on, you can have them preset into GPS mode so that you don't have them running from the computer in the car, because if you run it from the OBD, the computer in the car will give you the time in your clock. So the time in your clock is a terrible problem, because this car here, it's 20 years old, so it'll only fail at telling the time properly, whereas it can set for the time zone in the satellite what your exact time is according to the country's rules. So you use them in GPS mode to set a speed alarm. You do need to adjust the speed to fine-tune it so that it shows being a little bit faster than your speedometer shows you going by a couple of kilometres an hour, so that you don't do any speeding. So that you're well aware from your alarm too, being set at something like 39 kilometres an hour if you have a 40 kilometre an hour limit, that it will warn you sufficiently that your acceleration has taken you to a point where the speed is now notified as being right on the mark before the policeman or the automated speed traps grab you, so you can slow yourself down. So the problem is, always pick this. This one's cost me dearly, because this one only operates its compass on the display if that's hooked to a phone by Bluetooth. And in this country anyhow, there's now electronic surveillance equipment with the police to know if your mobile phone is switched on or in use for some reason in your car. And there are rules about using hands-free devices, so there's no point in having it if it has to hook to a phone just to show that. So there's the disappointment, because it's difficult to see in that one, the compass, because the compass is very important for knowing you're going the right direction in a city, and particularly on cloudy days when you can't see the sun, if you're any good as a navigator. So that's the lowdown on these, but that's actually quite a nice unit there, but it's not really the sort of thing to sit in there because it shows up too vast that there's something sitting in front of the driver, whereas that's nice and small and very explainable and doesn't get in the way very much. Neither does that actually, but I wouldn't say you'd like to be pulled over and have that thing sitting in front of your vision, as far as being having to talk to a policeman. It's just a point. That one's not very nice for that job, though it works exactly the same as that one for the point and what it will do with the GPS without any assistance. That requires, quite stupidly, requires Bluetooth and telephone assistance. Okay. So just to show you that bit closer there, what that one looks like. You can find these on eBay, and they're not too bad, so you don't want that one there. But this one here, that's another one if you really don't mind explaining yourself. That's a C5, that's right, I think, is it? Yeah, C5. It's not too bad, that one. It's pretty good. Well, that's all I can do for you about that. Now, don't forget, they do use a USB. They can plug in. Both that one and this one can plug in to a USB from your cigarette lighter. So you can get a USB socket that you push into the cigarette lighter, and you can run the cord like an ordinary USB cord all the way up to it. Much the same as you can do with a lot of dash cams. Or you can get yourself a converter. I can't quite show you that because it might be too dark. Let's have a look in here for a second. Yeah. This is a cigarette lighter double adapter. See that? It has a dash cam in one of them and a double port for USB in the other one. So I've now got two cigarette lighter sockets there off the one. Yeah. Just remember, you don't want the stupid garbage getting in the way of the GPS system. So you want to choose GPS mode if you want to be able to know where you're going with a compass, and at the same time give yourself a good speed alarm and give you some sort of aberrative idea before anything happens that you're getting near the speed limit. Right, now what we're looking at here is the C5 HUD. Now this is about as good as they get, because while this thing does in fact have a Bluetooth function to it, it will operate its compass, its GPS compass, without having to plug into anything like Google Navigator with any application with a mobile phone. There's something else this has besides a speed alarm, which I set to 40 kilometres an hour because it's a good warning. I'm getting close to 50 kilometres an hour with the new default speed limit for suburban roads. And the point behind that is that there is also the school zones that we have in Australia now. That too is, this functions a bit better. It quite obviously sets off the alarm. It says 40 on the actual HUD, 40 kilometres an hour on the GPS section of the HUD, but on this section it says about 38 kilometres an hour on the actual physical speedometer, which is interesting because I have this set to OBD mode, and it makes for very good sense anyway that for some reason that though it's in OBD mode, that it does in fact record the speed by GPS from satellite. So it's calculating that as it goes along, and it's calculating the direction the vehicle is moving. So it's a very conventional compass, because where north is, that yellow arrow on the left will point straight up. So east is out to the right, it'll point to the right, and west it'll point to the left, and south it'll point straight down. That doesn't change. Only the arrow direction changes around that. And so you're looking at the instrument panel inside a Subaru Outback, and up on there is a C5 high unit, not high unit display, head-up display. And this one's a special one because it doesn't actually, if you can see that pad just above it that's on the windscreen, it doesn't project onto the windscreen. It projects onto a screen that you fold up or down to the angle that you require. And this hasn't been all set in place, but the other thing this thing has is actually an RPM alarm. So I've tuned it to about 3000 RPM for a special reason. This is the piece where I point out that I was trained somewhat in the first year of automotive mechanics. And in automotive mechanics, there's something you can do with your engine oil. You, of course, must always use the engine oil that your manufacturer advises you to. But we were taught that in an emergency you could use other engine oils as long as they don't drift further than 10W. 10, not 10W, but 10. Sorry. To explain about oils, the winter tests for the viscosity of the oil is the left side number with a W beside it, which means winter. On the right side is the hot side, so that's not summer, that just means when your engine is completely hot, that will be the number that's the value of the viscosity that the oil likes to hang around at. So engines tend to run at different temperatures, but not vastly different temperatures inside either diesel or petrol engines. And that's another point about oils too. You must obey the manufacturer because some oils don't like petrol engines, some oils don't like diesel engines. And in rare cases, there are very good oils like, what's it called? Gulf Western Top Dog Global, which can be used in what they call mixed fleet situation, where you have both petrol and diesel engines. So it can be used for either according to the viscosity. And right now that vehicle actually that's in front I also have, that's also mine, but it's a diesel, this one's a petrol. And with very little variance of only about 5W, I can actually extract very cheaply a very large drum of oil that should keep me going a couple of years for both of them, for about the price of what anyone else would pay for possibly as much as little as one service change of the oil if they want good oil in their vehicle. So they'd only even change their oil once in one go at it. And I've got about about 6 of those for the drum for the same cost, or less. So there's that one, of course. There's that's a beauty. That one, it's Top Dog Global CJ-4. You should look that up sometime. There's a few others that are not too bad. I think there's a CK4 also. Is not too bad, but it doesn't really say much about being a mixed one. Now the trouble with that is, like I was saying, you go back to if you needed to put engine oil that's a value of 10 more or less into your vehicle, what can be a bit likely is you're likely to use a far more viscous or far more syrupy engine oil, and people often put far more syrupy engine oil inside their engines when they know their engine is a bit worn, so that it'll glue the engine together a bit better. Nice idea and a nice try, but the real trouble behind that one is if you are trying to pump oil through your engine and your engine oil is too thick, the oil pump inside your engine could easily explode. So that if you drive that RPM there up, where is it there? If you drive that RPM up too high, like you go beyond about 4,000 RPM, if you have seriously used very sticky oil inside your engine, then the oil pump inside the engine will explode because it cannot force all of that through. By the opposite point, just one more feature about that, is the reason it can't force the oil through is because the oil pump and its rate of flow that it pumps corresponds the width of the oil channels that are in there. So that's tuned to the SAE oil test of the two numbers for the manufacturer's recommendation for the oil viscosity. By the other point too, if the oil pressure drops too far because the oil is too runny, then you would need to rev your engine very powerfully, quite a lot, to keep the pressure up and keep the oil pumping through, because it will run through too quickly. It'd be like spraying it through there. So it tends to be that the syrupy point is a far more logical result and one that people would understand. Right, so back to this head-up display here. This is the C5 that I was mentioning that has ABD in it, which is known as onboard diagnostics. It is, in this case of it, rather than in a USB, with a line that's in its box plugged into the OBD port down underneath. And thankfully the compass is operating this time while I'm doing this. It must have been an awfully difficult fiddly. They're very fiddly. It's got 4 buttons on the side of it, one marked M for mode. After it switches on, you'll see a 0 or a 1, and you need to use the arrow or plus buttons to change whether it's 0 or 1. 0 means OBD, 1 means GPS. This is in 0 mode. No relationship like the oil test numbers for engine oil or any other type of oil. The 0 there, the number is not related to the mode right now. That's just I'm not moving, and the GPS will pick up the speed as I drive along. It won't pick it up from the actual speedometer that's in the car, though it's in ABD. That red line under those numbers on the right-hand side are an RPM indicator. And with the RPM indicator is a particular point to understand, is that the RPM alarm and the overspeed in kilometres an hour alarm that's set in it both go off. Now I've set this for 3, they both sound the same when they are set off. I've set this for 3,000 and I've set the speed alarm for 40 kilometres an hour, so you can have a look at this as it moves down the road. But that's why the C5 is a phenomenally perfect, as in the state it is in right now, it is one of the most perfect head-up display systems, and it's such a pity it doesn't work more seamlessly of going onto the windscreen and in a smaller box. So what we'll do now is we'll very carefully, because it's about 2 a.m, take this for a spin, and first I'll remain in first gear, because I've got to look at this, and I've got to look at the road, and I've got to look at the mirrors, and there is traffic comes along through here, but not very much. Yeah. Not very much right this very moment. And as you can see, there are people here too. They've got people at work, and there's a building over to the left there. Right, now you can watch
both the HUD and the RPM, and I'll bring it up to 3,000. Right, so we're doing 35 kilometres an hour, and don't be deceived by the point that RPM alarm has just gone off, so we'll just do this a bit more gently. There you go. So you can see that's just gone over 3,000 RPM, and now we'll go into second gear, and this is why I need to change the clutch inside this device, because it slips a bit right now, but because we can get up to 60 kilometres an hour in this. Now we're doing 40 kilometres an hour, and we're under 3,000 RPM. And that's the speed alarm going off that time. So come along and pull into here.